1. Introduction. In the infinite expanse of the cosmos, where countless stars twinkle in the black velvet of space, lies Xylor, a planet of unmatched technological marvel and military prowess. For millennia, the Xylorians have reigned supreme, their advanced civilization conquering every challenge the universe could muster. Their spacecrafts, sleek and formidable, cut through the void of space with the precision of a master swordsman, and their warriors, trained from birth, are the epitome of discipline and strength. I, Archon, am one of these warriors. My lineage is steeped in glory, my ancestors having led conquests across the galaxy. From the icy wastelands of Thraxis to the molten fields of Vulcanus, the Xylorians have faced and crushed all who dared oppose them. Our technology, our strategies, our sheer willpower, all have proven invincible. And yet, nothing could have prepared me for the bizarre, unfathomable force that awaited us on a tiny, insignificant blue planet known as Earth. What was meant to be a routine conquest turned into a perplexing, frustrating ordeal that would challenge everything I believed about warfare, intelligence, and the very nature of victory itself. 2. The discovery of Earth. It began, as most of our conquests did, with the routine scanning of the universe for planets rich in resources and weak in defense. Earth was identified quickly, a planet teeming with life, with water, with resources aplenty. The inhabitants, known as humans, were technologically primitive by our standards. They had only just begun to venture into space, their planetary defenses laughable, their military capabilities rudimentary. The Council of Xylor, in its infinite wisdom, saw Earth as a perfect candidate for annexation. A small task force, led by myself, was dispatched to begin the process. We expected little resistance, perhaps a few skirmishes with local military forces before the planet was brought to heel. After all, how could a species still bound to its home planet pose any threat to us? Our landing was swift and unchallenged. We touched down in a remote area, avoiding major population centers to prevent unnecessary panic. The initial scans confirmed our expectations. The humans were unprepared for an extraterrestrial invasion. Their communication networks buzzed with confusion and fear as our ships descended from the sky. Their military forces scrambled to respond, but we knew it would be futile. 3. The invasion begins. Our first encounter with the humans was in a place they called New York City, a sprawling metropolis that buzzed with activity. As our ships hovered over the city, casting ominous shadows on the streets below, we expected the humans to cower in fear. Instead, what we encountered was chaos, not the organized chaos of a desperate defense, but pure, unadulterated madness. Humans flooded the streets, not with weapons, but with phones, recording our ships as if we were some kind of spectacle. They waved flags, chanted slogans, and, inexplicably, some even cheered. My soldiers and I were baffled. Where were the defensive lines? The tanks? The soldiers? Instead, we were met with a mass of civilians, seemingly unarmed and unafraid. And then the messages started. Strange, nonsensical messages appeared on every screen we hacked into. Memes, they called them. Images of cats, jokes about our appearance, videos of their leaders making strange faces. It was as if they didn't take the invasion seriously. My soldiers, trained for tactical warfare, were utterly confused. This was not in the manual. We decided to take a more direct approach. We landed in the heart of the city, expecting to be met with resistance. Instead, a parade broke out. Humans dressed in costumes resembling us, though grotesquely exaggerated, danced in the streets. Some even approached us, offering us food and drinks, as if we were guests of honor. I could see the bewilderment on my soldiers' faces. This was not how an invasion was supposed to go. When we finally encountered the human military, it was almost anticlimactic. They fired a few shots, more out of formality than actual intent to harm, and then retreated. It was clear they were unprepared, but what followed was even more baffling. Instead of retreating to regroup, they began to play music, loud, blaring music that echoed through the city streets. It was not the martial music of our battles, but a strange, upbeat tune with nonsensical lyrics. My soldiers covered their ears, trying to block out the noise, but it was everywhere. We managed to capture a few humans for interrogation, hoping to understand their bizarre behavior. But even under duress, they simply laughed and continued to spout absurdities. One of them, a young man with wild hair, looked me in the eye and said, "Dude, you guys need to chill. Have a pizza or something." I was left speechless. 4. The strangeness intensifies. As we moved to other cities, we encountered more of the same. In Los Angeles, instead of a military ambush, we were met with a flash mob. Hundreds of humans, dancing in unison, blocking our path. They seemed to have coordinated this event in mere hours, yet there was no sign of traditional resistance. My soldiers tried to push through, but the mass of bodies was overwhelming. And the music, it never stopped. In Tokyo, we found ourselves in a city where every billboard, every screen displayed a strange cartoon character waving at us, encouraging us to go home and have a nice day. The city's defenses were oddly ineffective. Instead of lasers or missiles, we were bombarded with confetti and streamers. It was as if the entire human race had lost its mind. And yet, despite the absurdity, these tactics were working. My soldiers were disoriented, confused, and demoralized. We had been trained to face enemy fire, to outmaneuver hostile forces, but nothing in our training had prepared us for this. Stupidity. We couldn't fight it because we couldn't understand it. Back on the mothership, I convened with my officers to try and make sense of the situation. "They're not fighting back," one of my generals said. "They're mocking us. This is some kind of psychological warfare." "But to what end?" I asked. "What do they hope to achieve by making us the butt of their jokes?" "I don't know," the general admitted, "but it's working. Our troops are demoralized, our progress is stalled, and we're becoming a laughingstock." We needed to change our tactics. Clearly, a direct confrontation wasn't going to work. The humans were using their culture, their humor as a weapon, and it was proving more effective than any conventional strategy. I proposed a new plan. We would infiltrate their networks, learn their culture, and use it against them. If humor was their weapon, we would turn it back on them. 5. Turning point. The plan was risky, but it was our best shot. We began by hacking into their social media platforms, studying their memes, their jokes, their absurdities. It was a surreal experience, diving into the collective consciousness of a species that seemed to thrive on nonsense. But as we delved deeper, we began to see patterns, understand their humor, and most importantly, realize its power. Humor, we discovered, was not just a form of entertainment for humans. It was a coping mechanism, a way to deal with fear and uncertainty. By making light of our invasion, they were robbing us of our power. They were turning us into a joke, and in doing so, they were stripping away the fear we relied on to control them. We decided to fight fire with fire. Using the knowledge we had gained, we created our own memes, our own jokes, and began to spread them across the internet. But it didn't work. Our attempts at humor were met with confusion, or worse, indifference. The humans didn't find our jokes funny because they weren't born from the same place. We didn't understand their culture deeply enough to mimic it. As the weeks went on, the situation grew more dire. Our forces were spread thin, our resources dwindling, and morale was at an all-time low. The humans, meanwhile, continued to mock us at every turn. They created movies, songs, entire genres of entertainment dedicated to making fun of us. And the more they laughed, the stronger they became. I began to realize that this was a battle we couldn't win. Not through force, not through technology, and certainly not through humor. The humans had something we didn't, a resilience, a spirit that couldn't be broken by conventional means. They had turned our greatest strength, our superiority, into a weakness. 6. The final showdown. It was in London that the final confrontation took place. We had decided to make one last push, to show these humans that we were not to be trifled with. We deployed our most advanced weaponry, our most fearsome soldiers, and prepared to bring the city to its knees. But as we descended on the city, something unexpected happened. The humans, instead of fleeing or fighting, gathered in the streets, unarmed, holding signs that read, "Welcome to Earth," and "Have a cup of tea." They invited us into their homes, offered us food and drink, and treated us not as invaders, but as guests. It was a surreal experience. My soldiers, prepared for battle, were instead met with kindness and hospitality. The human strategy was clear. They were using their culture, their customs, their very humanity to disarm us. And it was working. I watched as my soldiers, once the pride of Xylor, were reduced to confused guests at a tea party. They sipped tea, ate biscuits, and engaged in polite conversation with the very people they had come to conquer. It was a complete, and utter defeat. Not because we had been outmatched in battle, but because we had been outclassed in spirit. 7. Conclusion. As we retreated from Earth, I couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for the humans. They had faced an enemy far more advanced than themselves, and yet they had won, not through force, but through their culture, their humor, their kindness. They had used the stupidest weapons I had ever seen, and they had won. Back on Xylor, I reported our defeat to the Council. They were incredulous, unable to comprehend how such a primitive species could have bested us. But I knew the truth. The humans had something we didn't. They had the ability to laugh in the face of danger, to find joy in the absurd, and to use those things as weapons. In the end, it wasn't our technology or our strength that mattered, but our understanding of what it meant to be sentient, to be alive. I left the council chambers with a heavy heart, but also with a newfound respect for the humans. They were not the primitive, foolish creatures we had thought them to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were resilient, creative, and unafraid to be themselves. And that, I realized, was the most powerful weapon of all.